Well, of course, well, that's a strange thing. I think mirror neurons in monkey has been studied in 5, 6 labs at maximum. Mirror neurons in humans, especially with fMRI, we studied hundreds of them. Sometimes I think it's almost crazy. The paper I published with Laila Krieger, a review article in Annual Review of Neuroscience in 2004, has been quoted 2,000 times. If you think the number of days, the number of citations, practically every day. So practically there is no neurologist who has not tried to put in the scanner a student and to see what's going on. So what you see here is not original data, but it's a kind of cartoon. Recently, there's an excellent review made by Carl Zilles and his colleague about which are the area more active. Anyway, you see it's active. What is active in monkeys? So inferior parietal lobule and premotor cortex. That's grasping thing. Then there was some discussion because people say, oh no, we found also mirror neurons or action, observation, execution circuit in superior parietal lobe, in premotor cortex. They are all right. I mean, it depends on the task. It depends on how you do the experiment. So there is no one mirror system. It depends what you are studying. So our cell found for intransitive gesture, for intransitive gesture is the green part. And the reddish part is a work of Orban, essentially, who showed that tool use, if you observe tool use made by others, you have another part of the brain. So it depends on the task. Now, another criticism which has been raised against us, very logical, it says, but we can recognize action that we cannot do. I can recognize a bird flying, no doubt about that. So how it is? So we did an experiment some years ago in which we presented, it was an fMRI experiment, subdivided in 2 parts. In the first part, the students saw action which they are able to do, like biting. And the same biting was presented in a video clip in which the monkey was biting and the dog was biting. The second part of the experiment, the student saw another person reading a newspaper, only the lip reading, the movement of the lips, no sound. Or the monkey making lip smacking. It's an affiliative gesture of the monkeys, and the dog was barking. So the results showed that one, it's an action like biting, it determines an activation very similar. In the left hemisphere are practically no different. In the right hemisphere there is a more activation for the human biting. And look with oral communication. Humans have a huge activation of Broca's area and other areas related to language. When we see a monkey doing lip smacking, we have a very little activation in the Broca's area, but with the dog, there is virtually nothing. So what it means? I think the best explanation is given by Merleau-Ponty. So we have 2 ways to understand, and that's a basic, that will be important, I think, also for autism. What Merleau-Ponty says is the sense of gesture is not given, but understood. It is recaptured by an act on spectator part. The communication or comprehension of gesture comes about to the reciprocity of my intention and the gesture of others. It is as the other person's intention inhabited my body. So there is 2 completely, radically different ways to understand the thing. One is related to our own knowledge, and that's a personal, it's a knowledge from inside. But then we recognize many other things from outside, like we recognize the physics of the external world. It's a basic difference, because one is really our own knowledge, the other not. Sometime I remember the story, it's a philosophical story, of Mary. Mary is a great scientist, and she knows everything about colors, especially red. She knows physics, she knows physiology, she knows everything. But a wizard determined that she never saw in her life red. Then the bad wizard decided to open her eyes, and she finally see red. She recognized red or not. So that's the difference. You have cognitive knowledge about red, but if you have no experience about red, it's completely different. I think that's a crucial thing, and I will come back on that on autism. So I think we have 2 different ways in understanding the external world. One is personal, one is not. Now, emotions. I will be very fast on that, but emotions, of course, if you think the term emotions, it means that it is something which is moved. So, although that's often it's forgotten, but our emotion is essentially a preparation to do things. It's often as a response to something. Well, emotion is localized in certain center. In cortex is the insula and the anterior cingulate. So we did an experiment in France, in Marseille, with Wicker and other, and we presented really disgusting stimuli, odorants, rotten eggs, and they activate very much the emotional center. And then we presented also this expression of different emotion, including disgust. I want to make the story very short, but anyway, with disgusting stimuli, we have the activation of the insula and of the amygdala, but when the subject saw the expression, they have the activation. The white dot indicate exactly the same voxels. Why that has to do with mirror system? Because if you stimulate the insula, you have a very complicated pattern, which is a motor pattern. So in this case, the emotion elicits in yourself the same motor pattern which is elicited by natural stimulation. My time is running, but I still want to show you first the motor taxonomy. So there is movements, and I already said what is movement. It's what you achieve by electrical stimulation, that's movement. Motor act is when I have a goal, and motor action is something more complicated. Let's imagine that I hear this glass and I grasp it. One say, well, it's grasping. But why I did it? You never grasp something for sake of grasping it. So there is another step, which will be drinking, or it will be moving. So action is a series of motor acts which lead eventually to a positive or negative reinforcement. So we have to distinguish these three steps: movement, motor act, and motor action. Now, motor action is really what drives us. So what we do things because we want to achieve something. Well, experimentally we can grasp for showing it, for using in fMRI or something like that. But we don't do it in the normal life. So with Leonardo Fogassi, we did this experiment. We are now back for a moment to the monkey and tried to see if the intention, so the why I am doing that, it's coded in the parietal lobe. And with our surprise, we found that indeed there are neurons which fire when I grasp to it, but don't fire when I grasp in order to bring to move it. And vice versa, they are grasp to place neuron, but not grasp to it. Here is the statistics. And the most interesting, some of them are mirror neurons. So when I observe a person doing something, if I have sufficient cues, like a block design or certain context, I can recognize the intention of the person. So here it's a jump. It's not what is going now, but what will be in the future. I think it's a fundamental difference. So when I am in a bar, I see somebody grasping a mug of beer, I recognize that he's grasping, but usually I know that he will drink. So I understand his intention, I don't understand also what he's doing. Unfortunately, in common language, there is enormous confusion with the term goal, because one can say, what is the goal? It's grasping. But the goal is also the intention. For example, a classical thing which Melsov described, he said the children understand the goal, because if I do something like that without putting the thing together, the child would put them together. So he understood the goal of the motor act, but not the intention, because the intention is something more complicated. He understood that. Okay, now the same thing, it's true for humans. So I will skip this experiment because maybe we have some time then for discussion. The experiment we did in Los Angeles with Marco Iacoboni, and it showed that mirror system is able to code the goal. because when you present action or intention, there is a greater activation of the right hemisphere, the node of the right hemisphere. But that's an old experiment. I want to lose time on that. Instead, I want to stop here. What about motor chain in humans? I already showed you what happens in the monkey. The same experiment has been repeated in humans. That's our group which did this experiment. Cattaneo, Maddalena Fabri Destro, Sonia, with the help of the group from San Miniato, who is here. The patients were from there, because this experiment will be done also, has been done also on autistic children. But let's see first in typically developing children what's going on. Here is the same task as before. The kid is grasping something, too fast, and putting it either in the mouth or into container. What we recorded is really very low technology, EMG from the myloideus muscle. Myloideus muscle is one of the muscles which open the mouth. So in this case, we look at when the intention of the boy is able to activate his effectors. And you see here, in a typically developing child, the 0 is the point in which the hand touches the object. Red line when it's grasping in order to put in the mouth. Blue line is grasping in order to put in a container. Well, if you see here, already 800 milliseconds before the hand touches the object, there is already an activation of myloideus muscle. So his intention is very clear to him, not only, but it's already in his motor system. He's prepared to do the thing. That's similar to Luria melodic kinetic melodies. So you see here it's that. On the right side is the statistics. Now, what happens when a kid observes? You see when he look at another boy doing the same thing, somehow it's internalized. The motor activity of the other enters inside its brain and already produces this activation in his myloideus muscle. I must say here that that's very clear in children. It's not clear in adults, I suppose because the prefrontal lobe is blocking this tendency to imitate, which in children is stronger, in typically developing children. It's stronger than in adults. What happens when we studied high functioning autistic children? Their age was between 6 and 8, and the results are here. That's the action. So you see, these are highly intelligent kids. They know what they want to do, but they are unable to transform their intention in the normal motor developing action. So they start to activate the mouth when they have already the object in their hand and they are ready to bring it, not before. And here is when they observe. So nothing enters motorically, but they know. They are intelligent. They know what they are doing. It's clear for them what it is. But that's the other system. It's the Sherlock Holmes system, not the Merleau-Ponty system, which works. They know what they want to do. They have the capacity, but nothing enters in their brain. They don't communicate with the other in this way. They can communicate in other ways.